Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CookieCast. Today on CookieCast, it's the football podcast, and it could very well be the last football podcast for the season. It's very sad. Very sad. But it's a juicy episode, nonetheless, so nothing to be sad about. Just myself and Paul this week. But we still get into the news and the previews and the reviews and all of the good stuff. I even have another crack at beating the jock. So yeah, if you're checking us out on YouTube, fantastic. If you're a YouTube subscriber, even better. If you just like listening, that's fine. If you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, that would be super, super cool. So here we go. This is CookieCast, the Riverside Roundup. Right, it's that time of the week again. It's Toenail Clipper Cast. With myself, Big Toe McGraw, and the toenail master, Paul. Cut it like it's Hot Williams. Wait, that's not why we're here at all. It is that time of the week though, and it is as Paul will tell you in a minute. A particular podcast that may or may not be going into hiatus soon. So, Paul, what is that podcast?
Well, Andrew, well, you ask, is another enthralling weekly episode of the Riverside Roundup, Yorkshire's premier championship-based football roundup podcast.
Fantastic.
Obviously, for the people watching on YouTube, they'll be confused, as over the last couple of weeks there've been what can only be described as a semi-permanent guest host.
Semi-professional guest host.
And he's very much conspicuous by his absence. He's not getting amongst it today. His old SW.
I didn't want to point it out at the time, but he very much shut that down, didn't he? He was like, "Screw you guys, I'm going home," sort of situation. It's the prerogative of a guest host, I believe. Can just flit in and flit out as you see fit. He'll be listening to this now, being like, "I absolutely didn't get an invite, so I just presumed my services were no longer required."
Well, it's the end of the season, isn't it? So we, like you said, we're winding it down. This'll potentially be the last one of the series. So might go dark for the next couple of months, so to speak.
It's a weird time. Like, you think I'd be used to it with the anomaly that is the NFL podcast, where it's just like I'm here for a minute and then I'm gone for a long time. But I never quite get used to a podcast, a weekly podcast that's not weekly anymore. I'll be here next Wednesday. I'll be sitting here like, what are we doing then? Oh my word! What will I do with my evening? It's absolutely time to take up crochet. Said nobody ever.
I'm sure there's plenty of stuff you could do, like just order and drink more non-alcoholic beers.
You see, you say that, but I don't think that's possible. Because I order and drink a lot of non-alcoholic beers. So, I nearly had a breakfast beer the other day, just for the sheer hell of it. Just like, Yeah, I'd never do this when I was like drinking. Let's move on from that statement, shall we? Anyway, that's not why we're here. We're not here to talk about my shortcomings as a human being. We're here to talk about football shortcomings as a sport. Usually, we have a very slick, very polished, very
meticulous.
That's the one. See, that's why you get paid the big bucks. I'm just here looking pretty. We have an amazing format here at the Riverside Roundup, and the format leads us all the way through, and it starts in one place and it ends in another. And the way it starts is we cast our eyes back over the last 7 days at the football world, what's going on, the ins, the outs, in a segment we call This Week in Football. Now, with it being the end of the season-ish, I can't imagine there's a massive amount going on. But I have a feeling that might not be true. So, what's happened in the last week in the football world?
Well, from a championship perspective, the big story. Let me back up slightly. So, obviously, we'll get on to the results slightly later in the podcast. But I am going to have to skip forward slightly. So the big championship news story is that Derby County so we covered it on the podcast last week. They were playing Sheffield Wednesday last game of the season, knowing that all they had to do was equal or better Rotherham's result, and they knew they would be safe. The game was very, very entertaining. Not so much in the first half, but they were 1-0 down at half-time to Sheffield Wednesday. And then in the second half, they ended up getting it back to 1-0. I think they went 2-1 ahead. The game went 3-2 down, so it went 3-2 to Sheffield Wednesday, and they got something like a 77th minute penalty to equalise, and that ended up being good enough as Rotherham conceded a heartbreaking 85th, 86th minute equaliser away at Cardiff, which sadly put Rotherham down and kept Derby County in the division. What we didn't say was that the Rotherham goal was very early and very much connected with the podcast. Was a hashtag casual wingy banger.
Indeed, it was.
So Middlesbrough player almost getting his getting his just desserts and his reward for smashing in a goal. But yeah, sadly it wasn't meant to be. So and obviously we'll come on to it later, but Wickham sadly didn't get the 13-goal swing they needed in the game against Middlesbrough, despite their best efforts. So they were also consigned to relegation along with Sheffield Wednesday and Rotherham. Now, where this comes in is that I will read directly from the Sky Sports app. Derby faced the possibility of being deducted points after the EFL won its appeal over the club's breaching of financial fair play rules. The EFL is pushing for any sanctions against Derby, who narrowly avoided relegation to League One on the final day of the championship season, to be determined as soon as possible after finding the club in breach of profit and sustainability regulations. It is not yet clear whether any punishment would be applied to this season or next, as the EFL said there was no definitive timescale for proceedings. So obviously that just means that the EFL is looking to take action against Derby for this breach of financial fair play regulations. Examples from teams that have done it in the past would be the 6-point deduction that Sheffield Wednesday ended up with this season that's just been finished. It started off of the season. It started off the start of the season as a 12-point deduction, but was then reduced to 6, and that 6 points ended up being enough to get Sheffield Wednesday relegated. Another team that is a case in point is Macclesfield Town. They stayed up last season, but were retrospectively relegated because of a points deduction that was added as a byproduct of their financial fair play breach, I suppose. So at this time, no one's entirely certain what the upshot of it's going to be, but it could end up that either Derby County get the points deduction applied to this season and they'll end up relegated. They get the points deduction applied to next season and they'll just start the season off with
-6,
-6, -12, -10, minus whatever points deduction, and they'll just have to start from even further behind the 8 ball than they already are. So, yeah, at this point, no one really knows what's going on, so we're just having to sort of watch this space, really.
Indeed. Yeah, a lot of information there as far as the upcoming results and the absolute score fest that we've got coming up. Anything else happened in the last week?
So it's not championship related, but it is football related, so it counts. Manchester City have successfully regained the Premier League title after Man United lost last night against Leicester. So it means that Man City are now uncatchable in the race for the championship. So Man City are the champions of England once again. That's about it. Oh, and they've had to move the location of the Champions League final. So originally, the Champions League final for the past 2 years should have been played in Turkey. Obviously, last year's final couldn't be played at the original scheduled time because of everything that was happening with the COVID outbreak. So that was moved to, I think, it was definitely Germany. I can't remember if it was maybe Stuttgart or Frankfurt or something like that ended up hosting the Champions League final. So as like a do-over, Turkey was given this year's final instead. The fact that 2 English teams got to the final, I think, has kind of forced UEFA's hand, because Turkey is currently on the red list for UK travel. So any Chelsea or Manchester City fans that would have wanted to go to the final wouldn't have been able to do so. So it's since been agreed that Portugal isn't on the red list. I think it's on I don't know if it's on the green list, but it's certainly on the amber list at worst. So there'll just be a small period of quarantine potentially when the fans come back. And I would imagine we're looking at maybe 10 to 20,000 people to go. So let's have a look. The capacity at the Estadio de Dragão, which is Porto's stadium in Portugal. The capacity at the Estadio de Dragão is 50,000, and UEFA is in talks with the Portuguese government to allow 20,000 people to attend the final. That would mean up to 6,000 tickets for fans of each club. So Chelsea fans and Man City fans may end up with 6,000 tickets, and then the other 8,000 will go to club UEFA members, the hoi polloi etc., etc. And yeah, so fingers crossed we should be dealing with about 20,000 to go to the final.
Nice.
Other than that, not a great deal has happened. Other than the end of the season.
That thing in it, when winding down, there's not a lot going on, I suppose. So that then brings us to last week's predictions. As Paul correctly pointed out, we did have our guest host last week in the form of Stuart Woodmansey, but he exhausted himself recording a lovely wrestling podcast this week, and he was basically, when they used to carry James Brown off the stage with like a coat over him and that's how Stu left the wrestling podcast recording, and however he did leave us his predictions, so yeah, obviously we will be trying to work out how to spend the £3,824 that we won this week. Obviously, as we all know, in my contract it is a stipulation any money won has to be spent on drugs and hookers. So there's that. First game of the week that we need to talk about was Middlesbrough, no surprises there, going up against, already mentioned, Wycombe Wanderers. Now then, something that I was going to bring up with you, sir. I don't know whether it is because of the podcast, or it's because I've got your good self on Facebook. I can't tell you what, but I now get all the Middlesbrough news, all the Middlesbrough Football Club news, and sounded feisty in the Middlesbrough camp in the last week. There was some talk of smacked bottoms for sure. I don't want to spoil anything, so let's not beat around the bush. What was the score in the Middlesbrough Wycombe Wanderers game?
It wasn't great. It very much had the flavour of an end of season nature to it. So yeah, sadly it ended Middlesbrough 0, Wycombe 3.
Which you correctly... Never mind. So, when it came to doing the book this week, my job was very, very easy. I didn't have to write a lot down, let's put it that way. For example, nobody of the three of us predicted a Wycombe win in any way, shape or form. And nobody predicted a single Wycombe goal, which means, that's right, I didn't have to check any of the names off. I think we kind of get where this is going. But for the lovely people at home, Paul, can you tell us the names of the three goal scorers?
Indeed, there were goals for each of Fred Onyedinma, Gareth McCleary, and Jason McCarthy.
Honestly, when I was writing it down, I was like, why wouldn't they just put that he scored 2? Oh wait, no, it's a different person with a very similar name. Yes, it was a 3-0 Wycombe Wanderers win. Paul predicted 3-0 to the Borough. Me and Stu were in sync across the airwaves. We had both had a 1-0 win for the Borough, different goal scorers. So, if you keep in score, not a single point taken out of that game at all. But it's fine because we've got 2 other games to talk about. Again, we've already sort of given you a little taste, a little preempt of what's coming down the pipeline here, because we've got Derby County versus Sheffield Wednesday. We already know the way the score went. Any long-time listener of any of the football podcasts will be casting their mind back now, being like, pretty sure you boys had Sheffield Wednesday to win this. Yeah. So nobody got it's fine. Nobody got any points for scores because it was a draw, 3-3 draw. Nobody got any points for the scores, but it's fine because we predicted a lot of goal scorers. Who scored the 6 goals in this game?
So there were 2 goals for Martin Waghorn of Derby. There was also a 3rd goal for Derby scored by former Middlesbrough loanee Patrick Roberts.
Indeed. Now, we didn't need to worry about that because nobody predicted a single Derby County goal, so we didn't care about those. What we did care about is the 3 goals scored from Sheffield Wednesday's side of the pitch. Who scored those goals?
Those goals were scored by, in no particular order, but a very, very particular order.
The order that the goals were scored in.
Correct. Sam Hutchinson, Callum Patterson, and Julian Burner.
How's that written down?
Well, it's spelled Borner, but there is an umlaut over the O, so I'm going to say it as an
Nah, I've written it down, let's put it that way. Anybody that remembers casting their mind back like, yes, not a single one of those people was predicted to score a goal. So, 2 games in, not a single point scored so far. This is what the people tune in for. The knowledge and guiding light that we provide week in, week out. So, because we had a guest host, we had a guest game. Because as Mr. Stew's mighty Hull City have made their way up. They've been promoted, but we were still dealing with their now previous division. Charlton Athletic versus Hull City. We all had to go at predicting some scores here. Some of us were completely wrong. And some of us were a little bit right. Let's find out. What was the score in this game, if you will, sir?
The score in this one, Andrew, finished Charlton 1, Hull City 0.
Yeah, this was one of those situations where I personally should have absolutely listened to Stu with his thinking on this one. I was the only one that went with a Hull City dominant victory with a 3-0. So no points for score, no points for goal scorer. Paul, you went with a Charlton win, and Stu did as well. Not quite the correct score, but still points on the board. The goal was scored by...
So, even though it was a 1-0 to Charlton, it was actually scored by a Hull City man. It was a Jacob Greaves' own goal.
So, here's the kicker, because the only person who could have then taken a point for the goal scorer would have been me. Because I'm the only person that predicted goals for Hull. Obviously, I didn't predict that goal scorer. So 3 games. A multitude of goals predicted. A multitude of goal scorers predicted. And the week finishes with a draw between Paul and Stu with their 1 point apiece. If Stu was here now, I would make you do a tiebreaker, which would be some kind of virtual arm wrestle.
Probably.
So, who do I see about getting my £3,000?
A psychiatrist, maybe?
So, games are done. Games are gone. No games. But we don't like to leave you hanging. We don't like for you to think that we're not there for you. Because, week in, week out, we're there with all the correct predictions. So we thought we'd spice things up a bit. And Paul, tell these lovely people what they could win.
Well, back in around January, we did start covering the FA Cup games. Now, obviously, this was because Middlesbrough had a third round game against Brentford. Took me a while to remember that one there. So they had the third round game against Brentford. They were defeated by Brentford. And to maintain interest, shall we say, in the competition, we decided that we would follow Brentford through the remainder of the competition until they were knocked out by someone, and then we would take over with that team and follow them through the competition until the final, thus maintaining a slight interest in the competition as a whole. At some point, I can't remember the exact round, but Brentford were knocked out of the cup by Leicester City. Therefore, Leicester was a team we would follow for the remainder of the tournament. Now, we did a little bit of a disservice to this, as when it was the FA Cup semi-final weekend, we completely missed this, as there were Middlesbrough games to cover. So we kind of shafted ourselves a bit there, really, because we actually missed the FA Cup semi-finals, which were between Manchester City and Chelsea and Leicester and Southampton. And Leicester and Chelsea prevailed to set up a FA Cup final this Saturday, to date this, the 15th of May, between those two sides. So obviously, we will now be predicting the Chelsea versus Leicester FA Cup final that is to be played on Saturday the 15th of May.
Correctamundo. So, we also get to play the fun game of I've already put down what I think is going to happen and written a load of people down that play for these teams, and you get to tell me whether they in fact do play for these teams. It's a lovely game. We like to play more often than not. Do you want to go first or second? Is the shortest.
I'm assuming that means that you've made your selection.
Oh, absolutely.
I will go first. How's about that?
Do it.
I will go Leicester to win 2-1.
Interesting. 2-1 or 1-2 for the book. Okay. Goal scorers.
So, as we don't have a second game to bump up the betting odds as we would normally, we're going to put on a scorecast bet for this. So we're going to back the first goal scorer and the correct score for the game. So I will go for the Leicester scores to be Kelechi Iheanacho and
Okay.
Jamie Vardy.
Okay. I feel confident with one of my picks, let's put it that way.
Interesting.
For Chelsea?
For Chelsea, I will go for Mason Mount.
Okay. Now I'm liking this, and the reason I'm liking this is because I feel we've just increased our chances of cashing in here, because I have gone with the complete opposite.
Right?
I have gone Chelsea to win 2-1. I've got Abraham and Werner to score for Chelsea. And I've got Vardy to score for Leicester.
So who do you think will score first?
Vardy. Mark it down.
Interesting. So you think Chelsea will go 1-0 down but come back to win the game?
I do.
Interesting. So, Andrew, what that does, from an odds perspective,
It's very odd.
let me just find the two. So, my Kelechi Iheanacho to score first and Leicester to win 2-1 is 45-1.
Not bad.
Your Jamie Vardy to score first and Chelsea to win 2-1 is 70-1.
I like it. So, there we have it, ladies and gents. Just the one game this week, just the one set of predictions, but big money to play for. It's always big money to play for. So, as I said previously, and as I say every single week, we have a real tight format for this bad boy. And one of the segments we have, we'll start sliding towards the end of the podcast. There is literally nothing that Paul doesn't know about football. If you ever meet him in the street, I encourage you to ask him anything, literally anything about football. And he will tell you the answer. He will then tell you why your question is wrong and tell you the question you should have asked, whilst also commenting what the weather was at the point in time that said thing happened. But I don't let that deter me from week in, week out, trying my damnedest to take down the tyrant. Now, here's the thing. It's potentially one of, if not the last chance to do this. So, I've had it's not smallest stadium question before you even get, and it's also not a who am I. But I've had this question ticking away, and there was part of me that's like, it's too easy. And then each week goes past, and I look at it, I'm like, is it? Yes, is the answer. But one of these days, Gadget, one of these days, there's going to be a question. I think it'll be like, it's too easy. And I'll ask it, and you'll be like, ooh. So, today could be the day. Let's find out. Also, just to make it extra specially difficult, I made sure the question had a load of words in it that I can't read. If you're ready, I will furnish you with this week's Beat the Jock question. I forgot, this segment's called Beat the Jock. Here we go. After Juventus, AC Milan, and Inter, with 9...
Scudetto?
That's it. That's the one. Which team has won the most Serie A titles? So, your question. After Juventus, AC Milan and Inter with 9 Scudettios, which team has won the most Serie A titles? Serie A titles? A titles? One question, one answer. Can I finish the season strong by beating the Jock, taking down the titan of football knowledge?
Now, if I have a weakness, it's definitely continental European football.
I am liking the sound of this already. However, I'm not fooled. I am no fool. I've been in this position before. I need a big clock. I should put you on. I should put you on a time limit. It should be like a ready to grumble, but a beat the jock.
Yeah, it should be
the jock clock. It practically writes itself. Come on!
It's all about the jock clock. You've got to. So that is your task between now and the start of next season. You've got until August, Andrew, to sort yourself out a jock clock.
I can only picture what that will look like.
Beat the jock clock. I'm just gonna have to guess, and there's a couple of teams I think it. Well, obviously there's more than a couple of teams it could be because there's all the other Italian-based sides.
I am gonna have to press you for an answer.
I'll guess at Roma. So don't tell me.
That is not the answer I have here, I'm afraid.
So I think I'll get there eventually, but this creates
how many attempts?
A sub question of how many teams am I have to cycle through to get to the correct answer. Genoa
is the correct answer.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know whether because Genoa haven't won it for ages. I honestly don't know when the last time they won it was, but I didn't think that Roma had been that successful, and something in the back of my head just said that Genoa might have been it. But yeah, well played, Andrew. Well played. Although I have now sort of, showing you my weakness, so I'm assuming that these questions
every single question next season is going to be like,
let's just take a whistle-stop tour across Europe for these questions.
Yeah. I'm just going to quickly check on Amazon for books on European football.
It's all right. I've got a backlog of 442 magazines that I need to read through, so I'm assuming that there'll be a fair amount of stuff covered in there.
So, what we have here is potentially the final one of the season. I feel it unfair to leave these wonderful people hanging, not knowing what the score in the cup final is. But maybe we do that through some kind of social media blast. Might even run a competition.
I'm sure we can put something together. We can maybe do like a wait for the FA Cup final to be done, and then do a cup. We can just do a cup roundup. We'll predict the Europa League and Champions League finals in a podcast, and then we'll do a big wrap-up pod.
Interesting. Very interesting. So, whilst I wait for your internet to catch up and hope that you absolutely don't drop off. No, he's there. That's oh no, it's me. It's me, Paul, with his new swanky internet. That is.
I didn't think it was me. I was like,
that is exactly the same as mine, but is clearly a lot better. So the final segment is as it always is. It's the any other business. So it's the last bit. Obviously, if this is the last episode of the season, you know, it is one of those that I do get a little sad when long running podcasts end. I do wonder what I will do with my time. But, you know, then I have crazy ideas about crazy other podcasts that may or may not come to fruition. But it does give me the opportunity to thank anybody that's taken the time out to listen or indeed watch along with us as we've ridden through this season with its highs and its lows and its just weirdness. So it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from him. Thank you very much for joining us week in, week out, if indeed you are joining us week in, week out, or if it's your first time, well, hey, you got a lot of catching up to do. So until next time, whenever that might be, I'm gonna say bye.
Doodle pip.
There we go, you see. Right, thank you very much, and we'll catch you around. So there you go, what do you think to that? That's that one done. Possibly that's that one for the season. We will see. Nothing to fret about, nothing to be sad about, and if worse comes to worse, you can always go back and listen to the whole season again. Why not? If you are watching us on YouTube, big thank you to you, and if you're a YouTube subscriber, give yourself a high five. If you're listening to us on SoundCloud or iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, do subscribe, because it's a big help to us. So that's it for this one. Until next time, I'm going to say bye, and I will see you then. Bye.